Welcome back to the CyberRisk TV live stream from Oktane 2024 at Caesars Forum in Las Vegas. I'm your host, Mandy Logan, and today I'm joined by Shaun Nichols, who is a reporter for SC Media, and today we are going to talk about what we learned, what we enjoyed, and some parts of Oktane 2024 that really struck us. Shaun, welcome.
Thank you, Mandy. It's good to be here and good to be wrapping everything up.
Isn't it? It's exciting. I think this is the part where you can step back and go, wow, it's really only been a few hours since everything began Tuesday, and yet so much ground has been covered. So many things have been learned, and I can only venture a guess at the amount of networking that has happened. Did you have any experiences with that?
Yeah, I came across a couple really interesting companies, talked to some interesting people. Didn't get to try out the rock wall, though.
You didn't? Neither did I, and I really wanted to.
I mean, to be fair, Mandy, like, do I look like the kind of person who climbs rock walls? I mean...
Hey, maybe this is one of those things like the millionaire next door that you never really know.
I
not.
I am not secretly a wall climbing aficionado. No.
You are not Alex Honnold on the side and just don't tell people?
No.
Huh.
No.
Oh man, you're destroying my dreams. Okay, so if you didn't do the rock wall, what did you do?
I caught a lot of the keynote addresses.
Okay.
Talked to a lot of people and get some context on it. And that was interesting. You know, there's the few major announcements. I know we're going to go through that. But also just to kind of get a little bit of context as to what's behind the keynote, all the bluster, the buzzwords and everything, and actually say, okay, how is this going to actually work? What am I going to see if I'm a developer or an end user or an administrator? And that was good. That was something that I really kind of stuck out to me, because I think when you just see the address, when you just see the news release, it can be very hard to grasp exactly what this means.
Right.
And sometimes that's just the question. It's like, what does this mean? Explain this to me like I'm 6 years old sometimes. And I think this conference was definitely an example of that, of just, okay, what's this actually going to look like?
And did you find that among all of the keynotes or most of them, or did you find that, was there one that stuck out in particular?
I think the opening keynote, the announcement of IPSIE, I'm not even going to try and say what it stands for.
Okay, I have this. I have it. I've covered us. That is the interoperability profile for secure identity in the enterprise.
Okay.
Okay, so standardizing regulations and abilities for enterprise security.
Yeah, basically it sounds like what Okta wants to do is get the OpenID Foundation and then several major cloud providers on board and get them together and just say, okay, let's standardize a way to manage identification. And let's do it in a way that's open source, that's accessible to everybody. That way, all of these SaaS vendors, all of these partners and customers know exactly what's going on, and they can interact and link up with each other. I think that's the big thing. That was the big, issue that kind of prevailed throughout the conference, was this idea that we have all these different SaaS providers, and they have different ways of linking up, sharing identity. Some of them have their own standards, their own frameworks, and we need one common tool that can let everybody talk to everybody else in a secure and safe way.
I found it incredibly comforting to think of the standardized approach to allowing SaaS applications to have that interoperability, but also for developers and teams that are creating proprietary SaaS applications. Not always is it that it has to be external vendors that you are bringing in their SaaS applications, but even for the development team, in order to have like Okta's viewpoint of secure by design, secure by default, moving forward with that as a vendor neutral standard that helps the entire industry.
Yeah, and that's why I think being open source is so critical.
I agree.
I think that's going to be a big link, because it's not going to give people the impression that, oh, this is just an Okta thing. They're the only option here. and they'll also know exactly how it works. And I think that's going to be a big deal as well, because a lot of these companies aren't going to necessarily want to share with a competitor or just another SaaS vendor or anybody else, if they don't trust the framework, if they can't see how it works.
Very true. And with using the OpenID Foundation as a starting point for all of these vendors coming together with one unified purpose, I appreciate that, because honestly, I was surprised to learn that Ping was part of the work group that was working toward this set of standards, given that in my mindset, Ping, what was ForgeRock, was a direct competitor. They're absolutely a direct competitor. So to see them coming together and building this initial framework so that the ease of use for identity providers and for SaaS applications becomes increasingly firm.
Yeah.
This is what we are going to do, and this is how we will be effective as an industry as a whole.
No, I think you're right. I think as they kind of work together on this framework, OpenID is going to be kind of the adult in the room, so to speak, so that you don't have some of these conflicts coming up between companies that are,
they
are
are
competitors.
Switzerland.
Yeah.
In this situation, they are
Yes.
Switzerland, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of good things that come out of that neutral space.
Yeah.
Did you have any other points on that for the IPSIE?
I am. It's one of those things where I'm going to be curious to see how it comes out, because if it works, I think it's going to be hugely important for a lot of SaaS vendors. It's just going to make things so much easier, make things easier for the companies that use these SaaS products. The idea that I could be able to have a single authorization, single shared identity between all my different SaaS services, that's going to be not only incredibly convenient, but it's also going to be so much more secure, because you're not having to post, the shared admin credentials for all your different services, and then, ask people, okay, how do you do this? How do we link this up? So I think that could be very, very nice.
I agree, and I'm going to reference here with IPSIE. What it does is help aggregate a set of existing and the new standards that are being put forth. So these include single sign-on, life cycle management, entitlements, risk signal sharing, and session termination.
And one thing that I did notice that one thing that Okta said was a lot of these are things that are already being used by a lot of these companies that are going to be helping to put together the session. So it's not like you're creating an entirely new set of regulations for the standard. These are going to be things that a lot of vendors are already doing or doing in parts. So it's just going to bring a lot of that together, and that's going to become, I think that's just going to make it that much easier to integrate.
I agree. Now, shifting from IPSIE, even though that was a major release and major process going forward, there were sessions that were specific to CISOs, and those I've heard had, I'm not a CISO, I was not in there, so I've heard that they had a lot of success in the CISO forum, and also on Tuesday, for those who may or may not know, there were invitation-only partner sessions. And what I have heard, again, that's an invitation only, but I have heard that the partners, the sponsors, working with the third-party vendors had a huge uptick during Oktane in understanding how these things are synergizing for all companies that are looking to increase their security posture and staying with that. Identity is security. This is what has to be in the framework and in the fabric of every corporation, but especially every tech community that wants to really forge toward our shared future of identity continuing to be in more and more and more places and throughout all parts of generative AI and the interactions of agents and bots and everything that is going into maintaining hybrid workforces, financial institutions, educational institutions. We saw here there were a number of sessions that went into global e-commerce, things like USPS, no, UPS, forgive me.
Yeah.
The UPS down to smaller organizations, nonprofits that are dealing with highly sensitive information and also require identity to be firmly handled.
Well, and this is one thing that did kind of stick out to me was that just talking to some of these partners, talking to some of these customers, they do seem to have all really bought in to this message, bought in where they want to go and what they want to do. And that's not always the case. Even if a new platform or a new initiative or something ends up working out in the long run, when it first comes out, a lot of times partners are going to be a little bit hesitant. And of course, they're going to tell you, no, we think it's a great idea, we like it, but they have that body language. They'll pause for a minute to kind of carefully select their words.
True.
But now talking to this, it seems like everybody is really like in favor of what Okta wants to do here and the vision that they've laid out. So that's something that definitely struck me was there's a lot more optimism behind it than a lot of people sometimes than
What
you
you've
see.
seen.
Yeah.
I agree, and I personally think after learning more about Okta for Good, learning about the initiatives and understanding how from Okta's inception, I believe that was in 2009 if I'm not mistaken, that being able to make sure giving back and doing good was a part of company culture, and also that making sure they were taking steps to become the most secure corporation in the world. They are making good on that, and I feel that there's an undercurrent for customers, clients, partners. They understand that that actually has happened.
Yeah. No, you definitely get that. There's a lot of that optimism, and yeah, no, I do think that there's people that really trust and believe in Okta. That's actually a conversation that I had with a couple of companies. Talked with 1Password, who said, the reason that we're really optimistic about some of these new products and some of these new announcements is that when we were a small company, when we were starting out, Okta was there for us. When we started to grow and expand, they helped us kind of grow and expand. And so now going forward with these new initiatives that they're laying out, we absolutely think that, yeah, we can be a part of it, and it can also help our business. We'll talk about some of those initiatives later.
Sure. But I had the same sentiment from Zscaler.
Yeah.
That the partnering that has gone on for years makes it incredibly simple to go, oh, wow, we really do complement one another very well.
Well, yeah, and I even talked with, a newer company called NameTag.
Okay.
They do deepfake detection
Oh, excellent.
products.
Okay.
It's very interesting. And they said, we're a 4-year-old company. We've only worked with Okta for 1 year, but in that 1 year, they've been really, really helpful to us, really beneficial, and they've given us reason to believe that we're going to be a big part of the growth of some of these new platforms, and we're going to be able to, go along for the ride with them. So it's not just companies that have been with Okta for years and years
Right.
that are on board with this. It's even, newer partners. And that was cool. That was interesting to hear.
Well, and that kind of, I think, ties right into the Auth for Gen AI, the news release and the new tools that were produced, because in the last 18 months, with the increase of generative AI going into all parts of business and personal life, of course, things like that, partners that are specific to deepfakes.
Yeah.
They didn't need to be partners 8 years ago because this wasn't as much of a threat.
Right. No, and that's kind of what their CEO told me. He said that we didn't necessarily think that this would ever be anything more than us doing something to detect deepfakes with a mobile device, but yeah, it turns out Okta has a lot to offer us as a partner, and to help kind of grow our product as well. So that was interesting. The Auth for Gen AI was. That was also, I think, one of the big stories. That was something that people were talking about a lot. I think there were a lot of sessions on it, because we're kind of hearing cases now where we're hearing a growing number of use cases for AI.
Right.
And, you're right, it's something that like 1 or 2 years ago, if you'd have said, oh yeah, no, Okta's going to have a huge presence in AI, might not have believed you, or they might have been a little bit skeptical. But now you look at some of the things they want to do. You're talking about things like AI-powered agents. So, right, your customer service agents, your helper apps, all these things that use AI. Like now we can. It's interesting how much of identity is involved with that, right? Because they have to pull up. If you want to use it for your customer service, they have to pull up your customer records. They have to pull up your history. They might have to use an API to call up another service and get your data from that. And all of these things, you need identity. You need to manage and control the identity. There's also the idea that sometimes you have to make it really granular, because you may be pulling up a private record, and you're not allowed to view 80% of it. But you need that 20%. You need to be able to crawl it and go through that. So it's also not just blanket, managing identity at the access point, or at certain points. It's every single query you have to run an identity check and manage it.
And I really appreciate on the Auth for Gen AI, the part on the fine-grained authorization for retrieval augmented generation, so that the information fed into the LLM is purely the information that the user has right to.
Right, exactly.
So I have very much appreciated this, Shaun. Thank you. I think we both had a pretty fantastic time at Oktane, and I do believe they will be back in Las Vegas next year. We don't know about that too much yet, but do you have any final takeaways for this Oktane experience?
A good experience. I really enjoyed it. It was interesting. I'm going to reiterate the point I made in our opener, which is if you do attend next year and it's at Caesar's Forum, it is not at Caesar's Palace.
It's not at Caesar's Palace.
It's between Harrah's and Aria, right?
Not Aria, no, it's just behind.
Behind, okay.
Right. It is to the east of Harrah's, not on Caesar's hotel property.
Yeah, that's the point. If you go into Caesar's Palace and look for it, you will spend 45 minutes walking through a labyrinth, silently crying to yourself. Trust me, I know.
So, aside from that slightly traumatic experience of trying to find it once here, I do think there's an ease of use that those who are online that will be able to access the on-demand replay of sessions here, and look for that at okta.com in the next couple of weeks. So thank you, Shaun, for joining us.
Yes.
And thank you to our audience for tuning in to our live coverage of Oktane 2024. To find all of the CyberRisk TV coverage of this year's event, visit securityweekly.com/Oktane. And with that, we are out and done with Las Vegas and Oktane for 2024. Thank you.